Chapter 9. Harvests came and went. They had been good. People rejoiced. Such rich harvests had not been seen for years. Old men sighed with inner fear as they witnessed the hubbub of excitement throbbing through the ridges, making things tremble. Had they not seen such happenings before in their days of youth? The elders then offered many burnt sacrifices to Morungu, who did not know what such unusual harvests portended, who could not remember the great famine that had swept through the hills, spreading its fingers of smoke to all the land of the Yokoyo. That was before the real advent of the white man. Most of the old men had then been young, but they had never forgotten the great wealth and harvests that preceded the famine. Shege could remember it well. He and many others thought that famine could never come anymore, that it had followed in the wake of their thoughts. Even when the white man came to Syriana, people would not hearken to Shege's word. When Kabonyi and Joshua were converted, he broke off their former relationship. These Christians would not come to any good, he always said. Who had ever heard of a girl that was not circumcised? Who would ever pay cows and goats for such a girl? Certainly, it would never be his son. Wayaki would never betray the tribe. In his own family, Shege had little to fear. His daughters were circumcised and all of them were well married. And Wayaki, who had now been in Syriana for many years, was unlikely to be contaminated by the new cult. He was equipping himself to come and fight for the tribe. But sometimes Shege had qualms about his son. Would he ever fail the tribe? Would he ever fail the prophecy? At such times, he experienced a sensation of defeat, of despair. Then his son would come for holidays, and Shege, though he did not say much to him, would see that all was well. He persevered. He knew that age was now fast telling on him, and that he had not many days to live, and he came to pin his whole faith on the young man. It was as if his life, his heart, was carried by Wayaki, and he feared the boy might stumble. In this, Shege did not see it as a contradiction that he, the embodiment of the true Gikuyu, should have sent his son to the very missionary center whose existence he had always opposed. But what did it matter? He had warned the people. They had refused to take up arms. It might even be too late now to take up arms. Luckily, there were other ways of beating the white man, but the prophecy still held good. In its fulfillment lay the hope of the people. He had learned a lesson, and he taught it to his son. It is good to be wise in the affairs of the white man. And so Shege waited and hoped. He watched Wayaki, his progress and his behavior. He lived in the sun. If the prophecy had not been fulfilled in him, well, there was the sun. What was the difference? A savior shall come from the hills. Good. Wayaki was the last in line of the great seer who had prophesied of a black messiah from the hills. The boy was doing well in Syriana. He had earlier on gone through the second birth. In this season, he would be initiated into manhood. This would help him to absorb the white man's wisdom more quickly and help the tribe. And this was what he wanted, to see Wayaki become a man before he himself died. Then he could be sure that the work he had begun, no, the work begun a long time ago by Mogo, would not perish. The sacrifices went hand in hand with preparations for the coming circumcision. Everywhere, candidates for the initiation were gathering. They went from house to house, singing and dancing the ritual songs, the same that had been sung from the old times when Demi and Wadavi were on the land. Wayaki was one of the candidates. He was now a young man with strong, straight limbs. He did not like the dances very much, mainly because he could not do them as well as his fellow candidates who had been practicing them for years. After all, it was soon after his second birth that he had gone to Syriana, and he had lived there for all those years, although he normally came home during the holidays. Wayaki was often surprised at his father, who in some ways seemed to defy age. His voice, however thin and tremulous, betrayed him. Wayaki often remembered why he was sent to Syriana, but with years the dream had grown less vivid and less real. He saw it mainly as an illusion, an old man's dream. Yet he worked hard in school. He was now in the senior class in Syriana Secondary School, and he was able to meet boys from all over Kenya. Wayaki's absence from the hills had kept him out of touch with those things that most mattered to the tribe. Besides, however much he resisted it, he could not help gathering and absorbing ideas and notions that prevented him from responding spontaneously to these dances and celebrations. But he knew he had to go through the initiation, and he did not like to disappoint his father. For Wayaki knew that the old man would die in that dream of the future, which had probably been a real essential part of his life. Not that Wayaki disliked the idea of circumcision. On the contrary, he looked forward to it. It was his boy's ambition to test his courage at the ceremony. In fact, he considered Livingstone, for all his learning and holiness, a little dense in attacking a custom whose real significance in the tribe he did not understand and probably never would understand. Above the beating of drums and jingles, shouts rose from hill to hill to keep awake those who might want to go to sleep. Tonight was the eve of the initiation day. It would see the biggest of all dances. Wayaki's mind was unsettled. He could remember nothing that had so shaken him since that famous journey to the sacred grove. But that was now a dream. This thing was real, was in everybody's mouth. All the time Wayaki kept on wondering, why should she do it? And she felt a desire to speak with her, to hear it from her own mouth. Modoni's revolt had rung from hill to hill, as if the news were passed by the wind and the drums. Her name was whispered from hearth to hearth. Wayaki had seen her the day before in a house where she had gone for a dance. But then he had not believed it when one of the candidates had pinched him on the back and pointed to a young girl jumping and swinging her hips from side to side in the midst of a group of dancing women. That is Modoni. Which Modoni? Joshua's daughter, of course. Joshua's daughter? Oh, Joshua's daughter! The thing seemed incredible. He had known Modoni when she was small. He could remember the day he and Kinodia and Kamau had made Modoni scream with terror when they had ambushed her at Honia. Wayaki had felt pleasure which had later turned to shame. It was no bravery threatening away girls, he had thought. Later, his mother had beaten him after discovering that he had taken part. Fortunately, the matter was hushed up between the women, and Shege and Joshua never came to know about it. And now, here she was. Wayaki had seen Joshua a number of times, both in Makoyo and in Syriana. He had heard of his strictness in matters concerning religion, which meant all matters concerning life. How could she have come here? Perhaps she had run away. Lots of girls had done it. At least that is what he had been told by boys who had come from the beyond, where missions had long been established. The same night, Wayaki had sought out Kinodia. Kinodia too was a candidate for initiation. You surprise me, Kinodia had laughed at him. Haven't you heard that she has run away? The idea that she had actually ran away, actually rebelled against authority, somehow shocked him. He himself would not have dared to disobey Shege. At least he could not see himself doing so. So tonight, Wayaki knew that Modoni had actually ran away. Her aunt, living in Kameno, was going to take charge of her. In some villages, people could not believe this. They said that Joshua had a hand in it, probably to appease the angry gods of the outraged hills. Was it not known that Joshua took beer secretly? Strangely, nobody had ever seen him drinking, but they said they knew. The dance was being held at an open-air place in Kameno. Whistles, horns, broken tins and anything else that was handy were taken and beaten to rhythm of the song and dance. Everybody went into a frenzy of excitement. Old and young, women and children, all were there losing themselves in the magic motion of the dance. Men shrieked and shouted and jumped into the air as they went round in a circle. For them, this was the moment. This was the time. Women stripped to the waist, with their thin breasts flapping on their chests, went round and round the big fire, swinging their hips and contorting their bodies in all sorts of provocative ways, but always keeping the rhythm. They were free. Age and youth had become reconciled for this one night. You could sing about anything and talk of the hidden parts of men and women without feeling that you had violated the otherwise strong social code that governed people's relationships, especially the relationship between young and old, man and woman. Wayaki still felt uneasy. Something inside him prevented him from losing himself in this frenzy. Was it because of Modoni? He wondered what Livingstone would say now if he found him, or if he saw the chaos created by locked emotions let loose. And the words spoken, even Wayaki was slightly embarrassed by this talk of forbidden things. Where had she learnt this? Wayaki wondered as he watched from the side. She danced, sang, describing love, telling of relationships between a woman and a man, scenes and words of love making. The missionaries in Syriana would certainly have condemned her to eternal hell. Wayaki gazed at her. Something slightly stirred in him. In the yellow light, she appeared beautiful and happy, a strange kind of elation. Somebody pulled him into the circle. It was Kenodia. "Dance!" the girl shouted, pulling him along the circle and repeating some of the hip motions for him. At first, that thing inside him kept him aloof, preventing him from fully joining the stream. Although his body moved and his mouth responded to the words, his soul did not fully participate. Then, from a corner, he heard his name. They were singing for him, some praising him and others making jibes at him. The name was taken up by the drummers and the soloists. The frenzy and shrieks were up again, and suddenly he felt as if a hand, soft and strong, held his soul and whipped it off. It was so strange that he felt his emotions and desires temporarily arrested in a single timeless moment, then released. Wayaki was nothing. He was free. He forgot everything. He wanted only this thing now. This mad intoxication of ecstasy and pleasure. Quick waves of motion flashed through his flesh, through his being. He was given a horn. He blew it madly. He jumped and swung his hips and did all sorts of marvels with his body. The others tried to follow him. Modoni's secret was out. You did not have to learn. No, you just gave yourself to the dream in the rhythm. Within a few seconds, he found himself face to face with Modoni. Both had been thrown into the center, and she seemed to hold him still, not with hands, not with anything visible. It was something inside her. What was it? He could not divine what it was. Perhaps her laughter. He thought there was magic in it because it rang through his heart, arousing things he had never felt before. And what was shining in her eyes? Was there a streak of sadness in them? For a time, Wayaki was afraid and looked around. His mother was watching them. He turned to Modoni. The magic was not there anymore. It had gone. In the next moment, Wayaki found himself wandering alone, blindly away from the crowd, wrestling with a hollowness inside his stomach. He felt hot. He had laid himself naked, exposed himself for all the eyes to see. He ran into the darkened fringe of the trees. She stood there, and the only communication between them was quiet breathing, as if each had his own devil to wrestle with. "You are a rebel," he said, almost unconsciously. "Yes, I am," Modoni answered defiantly. "Why did you do it, Modoni?" he asked with bitterness. "Do what?" Wayaki felt foolish. The words had just formed and he had meant to speak to her gently, coercing the story out of her. And now he relented. He stammered with confusion. I mean, running, going away from your father. She did not answer at once. There was silence between them. They could not see each other in the darkness, but they felt each other's presence by their breathing. Then she spoke, in a clear voice but slightly vibrant with sadness. No one will understand. I say I am a Christian and my father and mother have followed the new faith. I have not ran away from that, but I also want to be initiated into the ways of the tribe. How can I possibly remain as I am now? I knew that my father would not let me, and so I came. Her voice seemed to change, yet she was speaking in the same tone. Wayaki, however, felt as if she had forgotten him, as if she was telling her story to the darkness. I want to be a woman. Father and mother are circumcised, but why are they stopping me? Why do they deny me this? How could I be outside the tribe when all the girls born with me at the same time have left me? Modoni's words seemed to be opening a new world to Wayaki, yet he could not see it clearly. He was being carried by her voice as it vibrated. I want to be a woman made beautiful in the tribe, a husband for my bed, children to play around the hearth. It was a dream in which he was being carried, forgetting himself and the place where he stood. He remembered such another dream long ago, but this was of a different nature, stirring violent and contradictory forces in him. Yes, I want to be a woman made beautiful in the manner of the tribe. And she moved away in the dream, with the dream and the darkness. Wayaki remained where he was standing, feeling slightly dizzy and numb. Gradually, he woke from his numbness. He was troubled. He walked back to the crowd. But he now knew that they would not catch him again, for he was apart from it all. That night, a feeling that he lacked something, that he yearned for something beyond him, came in low waves of sadness that would not let him sleep. End of chapter 9.